Hello everyone, and welcome to Office Platoon, an upcoming video game that I am creating. Now, as a video guy, you'd think I'd want to make this the most intense, flashiest devlog ever. But honestly, I'd rather put more effort into the game itself rather than a video about the game. Is what I thought at first. But then, I set myself the goal of getting this game playable enough to have a demo up for you guys on itch.io to play right now before even launching the first video. And after putting in all this effort, I am going to go into painstaking detail over every single little piece of this game. So, what exactly is Office Platoon? Well, it's a side-scrolling, monster-catching, tactical, physics-based role-playing game. Now, if all that gamer lingo at once is a bit too much for you, basically, well, I like floppy physics games. Repo is my current latest obsession.
Yes.
Could have helped there.
I was busy dying.
And I also really like tactical games, like XCOM. No one else has really combined these genres, to my knowledge. Maybe there's something out there, but the closest thing I can think of to the vision I have in my head is Worms, which is a dead series that no one plays, and SteamWorld Heist, which is a great game that you should check out and a huge inspiration for this project, but that game's fatal flaw is that aiming a straight bullet in a 2D environment just isn't that difficult. I took it upon myself to make this vision myself, instead of waiting for someone else to do it. But before we get into the gameplay, we're gonna need some context. Like, I've answered what genre this is, but that doesn't really answer what is the game. So you know how in Pokemon, whenever they release a new Pokemon whose design is based off of an inanimate object, and everyone hates it and complains about it online? Well, what if we made a whole game where every creature was like that? So Office Platoon takes place in an office, who could have guessed, where some of the office supplies have come to life in a very cartoony, storybook, whimsical kind of fashion that starkly contrasts the depressing work environment that they reside in. These little guys are called copia, because that's the Latin word for supply, and like, they're office supplies, and you do battle with them. I'll go in much further detail about the story in a future episode, but for now, that's all we need to know for gameplay. So, how do you do battle? Just like in Pokemon, turns go in order of the speed stat, but unlike Pokemon, everyone gets put onto the field at once from the start. Each unit also gets 3 actions to spend per turn, represented by this battery icon. Your units don't get around by boring old walking. No, this is a funny physics game, meaning your units get around by flicking. Flicking costs 1 action, but you can also spend it on your character's unique set of abilities. To illustrate how I went about building this game, let's start off with 2 characters, Sharpshot and Gunflower. Sharpshot is a stick figure with a pencil sharpener for a head, very simple. Gunflower is also simple, a flower with a gun, who counts as an office supply because desk plant. So let's take these 2 onto the battlefield. To start, we have a flat ground full of empty nothing, which is very boring and doesn't really lend itself to that whole level design thing. So let's add some objects. The first issue I encountered was that building out a level like a side-scroller full of physical objects doesn't really lend itself well to tactics. This is because if all objects are solid, then most lines of attack are just blocked off. Take this scenario. Sharpshot is right on top of this table. He has the high ground, and the poor Gunflower has no defense, so this should be an easy snipe, right? Look at that. Look at how frustrating and unsatisfying that is. His own shot absorbed by the tippy top of the table he's standing on. So, my first solution to this was semi-solid platforms, a common sight in many 2D platformers. And luckily for me, the game engine I'm using has an easy one-click feature for one-way platforms that I can't use because it only works on the 2D platformer behavior, and I'm using the physics behavior, so I had to invent this technology from the ground up by creating a toll booth underneath each semi-solid platform that, when crossed, will give your character a ticket who the invisible ticket booth master will accept once they collide with the platform, allowing them to jump through it and then land on it once they've made it through. I also made it so semi-solid platforms don't destroy projectiles. Now, this is a huge step in the right direction because it made it very easy to design levels vertically, and it added navigable level terrain that you can move through without gaining any sort of protection. But it wasn't enough. So my next idea was to make it so that the hitbox that stops the projectile is different from the hitbox that the player character bodies collide with. My thought process being, in this high ground scenario, we can clip it just right through the edge of the table. This was a fine enough band-aid fix for the I have the high ground issue specifically, but I scrapped it for two reasons. Number one, the underlying problem still exists, where it was way too easy to become perfectly safe. A single box is still an insurmountable barrier that could only be circumvented via flanking. The second reason is that it's dumb and unintuitive. My game designer brain might see this two separate hitboxes thing and say,
yeah, that seems about right.
But players might get really confused when bullets sometimes go through objects and sometimes don't. And even if we display this difference visually, it's still dumb and unintuitive. Also, making a copy of another object but smaller works with simple shapes like squares, but really starts to break down with a more complex polygon like the table. It just becomes really janky really quickly. So I scrapped it. I took a seat on my thinking rock, and that's when it hit me. The solution was staring me in the face the whole time. All this talk of how I'm drawing inspiration from tactics games. What is one of the key features of those games? It's cover, a cover system. In games like XCOM, cover and peeking in and out of it, and the chaos of a firefight gets abstracted down into a turn-based system with chance to hit numbers. But of course, in my game, you aim the shots yourself. Instead of having projectiles disappear when they collide with a solid, they instead have a chance to disappear when they collide with cover. Each object has a cover effectiveness stat, which you can view by hovering over it with your mouse. This number determines the percentage chance that said object will eat any projectile that collides with it. Cover also has a durability system, another common mechanic found in tactics games that I'm drawing inspiration from. Each time cover does absorb a projectile, the damage that said projectile was carrying gets applied to the cover object. But that begs the question, what about the cover that I'm standing behind? Going back to our high ground issue, it sure would suck for me to be the one standing on this table, but to have to roll the dice in order to be able to shoot someone below it. So how can we have the character peeks out from behind cover to shoot thing in a gridless 2D game? Simple. We make a bubble. The bubble will always stick itself to whoever is currently taking their turn. Any cover objects that are overlapping with the bubble are nullified. This means that in our pencil palisade example from earlier, Gunflower can shoot past this wall with 100% certainty because she's the one hiding behind it. But other characters, far away from it, will have to roll the dice if they want to shoot past this wall. Similarly, in our high ground example, Sharpshot doesn't have to worry about the table absorbing his own bullets because he's the one standing on it, therefore the bubble activates it. And suddenly, with this new system, nowhere is safe when firing. But the more stuff you're behind, the more chances incoming shots have to be absorbed. We've brought back the tactics game choice of do I flank into a more vulnerable position where the enemy is also more vulnerable? Or do I keep my current position and roll the dice to shoot through? And all of this classical tactical goodness in the side-scroller format. And thus I felt satisfied with this as the core mechanic of my game, and decided to move forward. Now that I have my arena, it's time to add some characters to do battle inside of it. Now, here's the thing when making a strategy game. It takes a lot longer to get something basic off the ground running and playable. In a platform, it's like, boom, I got the ground, boom, I got the guy who can jump, animate him running, maybe give him a frame of jump, bada bing, bada boom, you're good, you got your Super Mario. But in a tactics game, we need all of that crap that I had to wade through earlier and figure out, and also, we're gonna need multiple characters, each with a set of multiple unique abilities, just to get the absolute bare basics. But enough whining. It's time to make a Tumblr account for everyone's favorite section, Blab About Your Original Characters. Now, I said this game is going to be a monster catcher, and it will be, But for now, we gotta get the fundamentals down. So Gunflower is an enemy unit and Sharpshot is a player unit. For the demo, I focused a lot more on the player units. Gunflower is pretty simple, she just shoots a gun. I also added Mouse Rat, who is a computer mouse and a rat. And 10 points to the first person who gets the reference in the comments section. On his turn, Mouse Rat will just run up to whoever's closest and whip them with his tail. How it works is on his turn, we turn off the physics behavior and turn on the default platformer behavior that I mentioned earlier, and just have him walk to whoever's closest and constantly jump so that we can navigate the level. Both of these enemies are extremely simple. With Gunflower, the counterplay is to just get behind a cover, and with Mouse Rat, the counterplay is to keep your distance. They also just deal damage, they don't have any more complex abilities than that. For now, I'm fine with enemies being super simple. It lets us test the foundation of our game. It makes sense to have simple enemies in the early game, because, you know, difficulty curve. And once I'm further in development, I'll add smarter enemy behaviors and more complex abilities for them to use against you. But when it came to the player units, I decided to fully flesh out their movesets before releasing the first demo. This is because, well, they're the abilities you'll be using as a player. If you were to make a Mario game and you wanted to show that off, you wouldn't want to half-ass the jump feature. So our player's 3 starting copia are Sharpshot, Superclip, and Graph Knight. This way, the player starts the game right off the bat with the gaming trifecta of attack, defense, and support. So we already know Sharpshot. He can shoot an arrow, but he can also shoot multiple arrows at once. Interesting, yes, I know, riveting. But then I was thinking, well, what other abilities can we give this guy? And then a voice echoed through my head. Floppy physics, floppy physics, floppy physics. And I realized all this talk of physics, but which character actually gets to take advantage of them, and how? So another ability I gave the little guy was Bomb Arrow. It's also incredibly simple. On hit, it'll create an explosion that does big damage and knocks back whatever it hits. The explosion is still just a stock photo. We'll fix that in the next update. But lastly, well, Sharpshot is a pencil sharpener, that's where he gets his name, and he uses pencils as arrows, so I made this really cool animation of him sharpening his own pencil arrow, and I'm going to force you to watch it because I'm really, really proud of it. Now, see, wasn't that cool? But then I realized something. Wait a minute. What does this ability actually do? It should be some kind of self power-up, but that means I gotta include a buff and debuff system into the game. So off I went to program that. Now, when talking about my game, I've mentioned a lot of other games that it's like. And I'm going to keep doing that. I've also talked about Darkest Dungeon on this channel before. And I'm going to keep doing that. For you see, I'm stealing Darkest Dungeon 2's token system. Just straight up. I'ma just yoink that. I don't think you understand how awesome the token system is in Darkest Dungeon 2. If you're unaware, no, Darkest Dungeon does not have any crossovers with Chuck E. Cheese, nor are they making a new rug pull cryptocurrency. What I'm talking about is how that game handles buffs and debuffs. Okay, basically, in most turn-based RPGs, it goes a little something like 15% more attack for 3 turns. Meanwhile, Darkest Dungeon, the equivalent of a damage boost would be giving someone a strength token, which gives a 50% increase to that character's next attack, and it is consumed upon use. Now, here's why I like this system. Number 1, it's much more noticeable. A 5 or 10% damage difference, I'm not gonna notice. A 50%, oh yeah, I'm gonna see those numbers change. Number 2 is that there's counterplay. Let's say the enemy has a defense buff. In a normal RPG, you can just wait for it to expire, or you can push through it. In Darkest Dungeon 2, if an enemy has a block token, you could use moves that specifically ignore it. You could use an attack that doesn't deal much damage, and most of the value comes from a rider effect. You could use a multi-hit move to take down multiple tokens in one action, Or you could use my personal favorite, Highway Robbery, which lets Highwayman steal buffs from enemies. That's so cool. It's just like how I'm stealing this piece of game design and putting it in my own game. So going back to Sharpshot, his Sharpen ability grants him 1 power token and 1 pierce token. The power token is just 50% damage on his next attack. Very simple, literally just stolen from Darkest Dungeon 2. But the pierce token, on the other hand, is original. I had to use my brain for that one. A pierce token will make it so that your next shot will ignore cover. And this lets you mitigate some randomness at the cost of an action. Next up on our list is Superclip. Admittedly, this guy is a pretty wholesale ripoff of Clippy, except Microsoft can't sue me because my totally original character is superhero themed. See, he's even got a sticky note for a cape, instead of just a piece of paper that's kind of there. Also, he has a mouth. Also, he's here to rizz up your girl. Now, we might typically think of superheroes as punchy fighter types, but I actually made Superclip a support character. I think it makes sense, being based off Clippy. He sits behind the front line and gives advice. That's actually one of his abilities, by the way. That's how he heals other units. His other supporting ability is Rescue. It lets him basically teleport an ally unit anywhere within a radius, and while also delivering a small heal to them. He does have attacks, though they're a little pathetic. First is Laser Vision. Unlike Sharpshot's arrows, it's super easy to land. There's no aiming or gravity or physics or anything. You just beam in a straight line. But the cost is that it does almost no damage. Now this sounded like a fine trade-off for an attack on paper. Low risk, low reward, he's a support character, weak attack. But the problem is you combine a long-ranged, easy-to-land attack with being able to fly, and you have a recipe for something that's just good in 100% of situations. There's never not a good time to spam lasers as Superclip. You only need to heal if an ally has taken damage, and repositioning is pretty cool, but it's even more situational. This meant that the optimum flowchart strategy for Superclip was usually to just spam lasers. That's when I realized that we needed to give our support character some ways to do supporting in a way that is proactive, not just reactive. Laser needed some competition, so I had to rework Cape Gust. You see, initially, this move just blew away enemies. The idea was, our support character can have a back off me tool in case he gets swarmed by too many enemies. Push them away, yes. This was dumb, because Superclip doesn't need the ability to push enemies away because he can fly. So I changed Cape Gust to be a more supportive ability. You can still use it to deal a tiny amount of damage and push away enemies, should you ever find yourself in that situation. However, the main new gimmick of Cape Gust is that it is no longer Cape Gust, but now Tailwind, because when used on an ally, it gives them a dodge token. But what does that mean? Typically, in turn-based RPGs, avoiding attacks involves a whole lot of standing still, and the attack still hits, it just does 0 damage, and we call it a miss. But in my game, our characters are not locked into an orderly queue. There's space to move around here. I had a devilish little thought. What if dodges in my game happened by actually physically dodging the incoming attack? I know, revolutionary for a turn-based game, but how it works is that characters who possess a dodge token will automatically jump in a random direction whenever a projectile is coming towards them outside of their turn. And maybe that gets them away from the attack. Maybe it doesn't. And that's the beauty of it. We still have that random chance to hit, but all of it is done through actual physical space. The only issue with this system is melee attackers, because the 2 melee attacks that I have programmed into the demo both lock onto their targets instantaneously and also instantaneously deal damage, meaning they can't really be avoided by moving. This means that melee attacks are the counter to the dodge token, though I'm a little concerned that simply ignoring mechanics is kind of uninteresting. But for now, I'll leave it as is, and come back to it once I've designed more game and there's more levels and more abilities and whatnot, and we'll see how it actually plays out. And finally, that brings us back to Laser Vision. I made it so that lasers have a 20% chance to inflict feeble, which decreases the next enemy attack by 50%. This way, at least if you're spamming lasers, you still get the fun of rolling dice. 20% might sound like a very low chance, but this guy has 2 eyeballs, so he's shooting 2 lasers. So really, it's more like a 40% chance. Yeah, that's how math works. Finally, there's Graph Knight, the defense character. His first ability is Le Point, which is just a basic melee attack. It is fairly good reach considering he wields a lance. Also, melee attacks just completely ignore cover as well. His second ability is Protéger, which means protect in French. I want this unit to be able to protect its allies. And to do that, it needs to have more than just a high HP stat. It needs abilities that actually help protect the team. Protéger is a bodyguard ability. Anyone inside this radius that it creates has incoming damage redirected towards Graph Knight. Using the ability also gives Graph Knight 2 block tokens to help absorb the incoming damage. A lot of RPGs have a "get down, Mr. President" type of move, but very few RPGs have actual physical space, which is why I made this move protect everyone in a radius rather than having it link up to one ally, because if said ally moves away, well then how does that damage redirection make sense? Graph Knight's third ability is Joust, which lets him move and attack at the same time, basically. His final ability is Hold the Line, which creates a line that acts as cover. It blocks projectiles, but doesn't stop movement. It just kind of felt like it fit perfectly, both gameplay-wise and thematics-wise. I really don't have much else to say about it, other than like, look at the animation. It's cool, it's good, this is awesome. But that about wraps it up for core mechanics and the gameplay abilities of these starting characters. Now there is a lot more to go over, and I want to talk about it all, but I'm gonna wrap things up for now. In the meantime, you know you can play this game, right? I've been talking a lot about game design, what is and isn't good game design, but the truth is, I'm not an expert. I don't work in the games industry, I'm just some guy with a special interest in game design, and I've been watching channels like Adam Millard and Game Maker's Toolkit ever since my parents handed me an iPod Touch. And that's why I want player feedback, because I can theorize what is and isn't fun until the cows come home. But I won't really know if the game is any good or not until people other than me actually play it. So even though I'm extremely early in development, I still made a playable demo. It's on itch.io right now. You can even play it in your browser. You don't have to download anything. Important note though, it's only on computers. It might launch on mobile since it's an HTML5 game, but I did not add touch controls. So pretty please, if you would, maybe consider playing the demo and report any bugs you find, because there's probably going to be a ton of those, and leave some constructive feedback. As always, thank you for watching. Oh, hold on. I forgot to be a YouTuber. If this video gets 100 likes, I will add... hold on. If this video gets 100 likes, I'll add Mickey Mouse to my game, so smash that like button if you want to see Steamboat Willie. Alright, enough call to actions. Bye-bye.